What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. It is time for women's college basketball, so I am getting you ready for that today. But first, appreciate you being here. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because I'd like for you to stick around. Let's get into it. Okay, I'm going conference by conference, previewing the teams I think will be Final Four contenders when it's all said and done. I'll remind you what they did last year, what's new this year, and what to expect. And then we get to see how it all plays out. Starting with the ACC, which has 6 teams in the preseason top 25, tied for second most behind the SEC. How many of them have a legitimate chance at making the Final Four in Tampa? Let's talk about it, starting with the 6th ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Coach Nielle Ivey's squad had an impressive season last year as they won the ACC tournament and earned a 2 seed in the Big Dance, where they bowed out in the Sweet 16. They did this without star Olivia Miles, who missed the entire season with an injury sustained in the final regular season of 2023. Well, she's back, so what does that mean for this season? So think back to the beginning of last season with this Irish team. Miles is out. We don't really know what to make of them. They're facing off against the Gamecocks in Paris, another team we didn't really know what to think about at the time. So we're all hoping to get some answers, and we certainly did. First of all, South Carolina won in such an impressive way that we had to be like, hold up, this might not be a rebuilding year, which is hilarious to think about in hindsight. But we also learned, despite the loss, that Notre Dame had a superstar in Hannah Hidalgo, the true freshman point guard who finished that game with 31 of her team's 71 points in her very first collegiate game. That continued when they got back to the States, and Hidalgo was named first team All-American, one of 2 freshmen to receive that honor along with Juju Watkins, after averaging 23 points, 6 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and a nation-leading 4.6 steals per game. What makes her so great and so fun to watch is that she's relentless. When she's in the game, her motor is constantly running on both ends of the court. She's yelling, she's running, she's hyped up. And sometimes when players do that, they can get out of control, especially freshmen. But she did a decent job of maintaining her composure. The only time she really lost her composure, unfortunately, was in their loss in the tournament to Oregon State, when officials made her leave the game to remove her nose ring. Took a little while to get it actually out, and she looked and played rattled when she came back in, just never really got into a rhythm. Overall, though, a historic freshman season. So where does she go from here? Does her three-pointer become a little bit more consistent? Can she cut down on her turnovers a bit? Does her shot selection get a little bit better? There were times last year when I felt like she tried to do a little bit too much. Part of that was inexperience, and part of that was that Fighting Irish players were dropping like flies, so she didn't have a ton of help and had to try to make things happen. I'm anticipating some of that goes away with the return of Miles. In case you forgot, Olivia Miles was a first-team All-American herself the season she got hurt. A do-it-all point guard, she finished that year 6th in the nation in assists with 6.9 per game to go along with 14 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 steals. So now Coach Ivey has 2 guards who can run the point and wreak havoc on the defensive end. I'm interested to see how she uses them. I kind of feel like Hannah will be more off the ball, but they don't pay me to make those decisions. But if they want to, they're more than welcome to. And it's not just those 2 who you should be excited about. All ACC guard Saniya is back. She's a knockdown 3-point shooter who, like Miles and Hidalgo, rebounds well for her position. Also a good playmaker. She did a great job of picking up the slack on offense with Miles out, averaging 17 a game while being pretty efficient. Leah King was a huge get for them from Pitt. She flew under the radar because the Panthers had a rough season, but she was named the ACC's most improved player last year after averaging 19 points, 10 boards, nearly 2 steals, and a block and a half per game. She had a monster 34-13 and 3-block game against the Irish last season, so yeah, I'd recruit her too. She, along with Miles and Hidalgo, looked sharp in their exhibition game against Davenport, as did 6'5" freshman center Kate Koval, who is the number 5 overall recruit in the class of 2024. They also brought in Marquette transfer Liza Carlin, who was a finalist for the Katrina McClain Award as the nation's top power forward last season. She can score, even has a little bit of range to spread the floor, and she's also a solid rebounder. So this team has a high talent level, and I trust Coach Ivey to figure out how to make the pieces fit. How long that takes, who knows, but she'll certainly make it happen by March if I had to bet, What are my concerns about them? Well, same as it's been the past couple of seasons, health. Carlin left that exhibition game with an injury. Citron and backup guard Emma Risch didn't play at all due to being banged up. Maddie Westbeld played a huge role for this team last year, but she's out until at least the beginning of the year with a foot injury. And we won't see Kylie Watson or KK Bransford at all this season. And they each played 25 minutes a game last year. So yeah, I do expect them to make a Final Four run, possibly even a national title run, but I'm going to be holding my breath the entire time. Wes Moore's NC State Wolfpack did make a Final Four run last year before running into that South Carolina team. Can they do it again? They enter this season ranked 9th in the country. They do lose 2 front court starters off that team in Rivers Baldwin and Mimi Collins, but a big reason for their success was the development of Aziaha James, Saniya Rivers, and Madison Hayes, and they're all back. James is a certified bucket. If she picks up where she left off in the tournament, she could find herself on one of the All-American teams. She averaged about 17 points on 42% from the field and 34% from 3 on the season, which is good, but her numbers jumped to 23 points per game on 48% from the field and a scorching 50% from 3 in the tournament. Rivers is a very athletic, do-it-all player. She's great in transition, can make plays for others. She actually led them in assists last season. And really the thing that catches my eye about her is her ability to defend. She's very versatile on that end of the court and great at creating easy buckets off turnovers. She made the ACC All-Defensive Team as well as the All-ACC First Team and has the ability to impact the game and set the tone for this team in so many different ways. Doesn't always show up in the box score, but she plays a huge role for them. One thing to look out for is how her scoring ability is coming along. She slowly but surely improved that area of her game year after year, but if she's able to start knocking down jumpers, that's really going to unlock the rest of what she likes to do on that end of the court. As for Madison Hayes, she flashed a 3-pointer herself last year, making 40% from deep. She's reliable. She's going to get you double-digit points. She's going to crash the board. She's going to defend. One of those elite role players you need if you're going to win games. When it comes to new faces, you need to pay attention to Zam Jones. She reminds me of Hannah Hidalgo in the sense that she's small, but an absolute dog on the court. She's going to be exciting to watch. She's explosive, can get to the rim, can knock down threes. She wants to defend the other team's best player. She rebounds great for her size and position. She adds a dynamic with her playmaking ability that they really didn't have last season. They also brought in Caitlin Weimar from Boston University. She was the Patriot League Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. That should help fill that void left by Baldwin. 6'4", averaged 19 and 10, was also 6th in the country with nearly 3 blocks per game last season. Which brings me to what I'm concerned about as they look to return to the Final Four. This is a deeper team than last year at the guard spot. I've mentioned a lot of them, but Zoe Brooks is back too. She was instant offense off the bench. Lacey Steele saw some time as a freshman. And in addition to Zam, they also bring in freshman Devin Quigley. They are set there with a good mix of potential and experience. You can't say the same about the post, though. Someone is going to have to step up for them. If you listen to all these previews, which you should, I probably sound like a broken record about this, but if you're going to make a deep run in March, odds are you're going to have to go through a team with a dominant big. How do you handle that? Can you handle that? Right now, I have my doubts about the Wolfpack. That was kind of the story of their tourney run last season. They upset Stanford because Cam Brink and Kiki Iriafen were both in foul trouble. Now, Kiki did finish with 26 and 10, but only played 23 minutes. And Brink fouled out after just 24 minutes because that was just kind of how her whole tournament went. But then against South Carolina, Camila Cardoso only played 23 minutes because that's all they needed from her. They came out after halftime and blew the doors off them in the third, outscoring NC State 29-6. In those 23 minutes, Camilla finished with 22 and 11, missing just 2 shots, and Ashlyn Watkins had 20 rebounds. The Wolfpack had 28 rebounds as a team. I have no reason to believe that's been fixed. In fact, it may be an even bigger issue this season. So what happens when they meet up with a team that's huge like that? Now, overall, this is certainly a Final Four contender, but just something to look out for as the season develops. Right down the street from them, could the 11th ranked Duke Blue Devils end up in Tampa as well? Carol Lawson's team used a stifling defense to make a Sweet 16 run as a 7 seed last year, upsetting 2 seed Ohio State in the process. What does this year look like? This is close enough that I'm going to say there's a chance they can make a Final Four run. If they do, we might raise an eyebrow or two, but they say defense wins championships, and while I doubt they'll do that, they will absolutely defend. The question's going to be, will they score enough for it to matter? I mean, they held UConn to 53 points in that Sweet 16 matchup and lost. Now, the good news is they spread the little wealth they do have on offense around, with 7 players averaging at least 5 points per game last season, which is significant on a team that averages 68 total. Of those 7 players from last season, 6 returned this year, including leading scorer Reagan Richardson, who averaged 12.4 points a game. The bad news is that that's the same group that made scoring look so hard. As a team, they didn't hit threes. Ashlyn Jackson, who's back this year, was their most consistent threat from there, hitting 36% of her 4.5 attempts per game. They didn't get to the free throw line either, especially for a team that's so inside the arc oriented. They averaged just 14 free throws per game. No individual player averaged 3 attempts per game. And they turned the ball over more than they assisted, averaging 17 turnovers to just 14.5 assists. That's not a recipe for the high levels of success we're talking about here. So what has Coach Lawson done to fix this? Well, recruit. The headliner here is Toby Fournier. She's a 6'2" white Canadian who can dunk with 2 hands. As a 6'1" black South Carolinian who cannot, I'm impressed. That kind of athleticism will let her disrupt things on defense, obviously, but I'm more excited about what she's able to do in the open court off of turnovers or rebounds. She can handle the ball and get out and run, has a little bit of a jump shot as well. She's got a nice little post game. You're going to want to pay attention to her. Also, watch out for Ariana Roberson. She's 6'4". She can play the 4 or the 5. Like Fournier, she runs the floor well, and she can also stretch the floor out to 3-point range. I'm not super high on this team as Final Four contenders. I just struggle to believe in teams that have a tough time putting the ball in the hoop, but we did see them give teams hell all last season, so even if there's the smallest improvement in their offseason, you have to think they can make a run. Now, this is a deep league, but as far as serious Final Four contenders in the ACC, this might be controversial, but that's it. North Carolina's number 15. They had similar offensive struggles as Duke last season, but their defense wasn't nearly as good. We saw them get drilled by South Carolina in round 2. I do think things could be a little better than last season. Moving on from Deja Kelly, who's at Oregon now, was the right decision for both sides. Alyssa Utsby and Lexi Donarski are both quality players. I know they brought in Trayana Crisp from Arizona State and Grace Townsend from Richmond. Maria Gakdeng really impressed me last season. But again, this is a team with too many issues right now for a deep run. Sweet 16 maybe, but past that, I'm not really seeing it. Same story with Louisville, who's number 17. Jeff Walz did a great job with this recruiting class. They're number 6, according to ESPN. Amari Berry, Azella Arenas, McKinley Randolph, Taj Roberts. They have a very bright future for sure, and they bring back Jada Curry, Olivia Cochran, and Nyla Harris from last year's team. I just don't think they're going to be ready yet this year. I actually like number 19 Florida State better than them right now. Taniyah Latson is one of the best players in the country. Michaela Timpson is a double-double machine. Omariah Gordon can fill it up. I would have had them ranked higher, and I think they can make some noise come March. Brooke Wyckoff is putting together one hell of a program. I'm glad to see she's healthy again. They're going to play fast, and if they can defend a little bit, they could go far. Now, far is relative, of course, but Sweet 16, possibly Elite 8. I like their chances better than Louisville and North Carolina the more that I think about it. A lot of good teams in this conference. Got to see how Stanford fits in too, so make sure you're tuned in. Subscribe to my weekly sports watch guide in the show notes if you need help with that. We're not done yet. I'm just plugging my stuff mid-show. We still need to talk about the Big East. Big 10, Big 12, and SEC previews will be in other videos. Go check those out. The Big East is not as deep as the ACC, but boy, do they have a contender. Of course, I'm talking about UConn. They're ranked number 2 to open the season after last year's Final Four heartbreak. I mean, a moving screen right there in that moment, really? This is their longest title drought since winning their first one in 1995. Does it end this year? The story at UConn has never been the talent. While Gino doesn't get to pick and choose who he wants the way he could in the past, plenty of great high schoolers are still ready to sign up to continue that winning tradition. They had the number 2 ranked recruiting class in the country in 2024, according to ESPN. That includes guard Ali Zeibel, the number 7 recruit in the country, wing Morgan Shelley, the number 11 recruit in the country, and of course, the nation's top recruit of 2024, Sarah Strong. All 3 are incredibly versatile players who will help spread the floor. Point guard Caitlin Chen also transferred in from Princeton, where she led the Tigers to 3 NCAA tournament appearances. This addition of both young and older new faces should ease the pain of losing Nika Mule and Aaliyah Edwards to the WNBA. However, their title chances rest on the shoulders of the health and play of their stars, Azzi Fudd and Paige Beckers. Fudd has played just 42 games in her 3 seasons. She made it through 2 last year before another knee injury in practice ended her year. Her college career has been false start after false start. She was talented enough to be the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. We've seen it in flashes. Can her body hold up? And how have the injuries taken a toll on her not only physically, but mentally as well? I cannot imagine the disappointment of being that talented and people expecting all kinds of things from you, but your body just won't let you do it. We're all hoping she's healthy. Word is that she is, but that doesn't mean she's necessarily just going to come back and look like the player she was pre-injury right off the bat. It could take time. It has for Paige. I always go back to Paige's performance against South Carolina her freshman year. UConn won in overtime. Paige played all 45 minutes. She scored 31 of their 63 points to go along with 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and 6 steals. It wasn't just the numbers, though. She played with this attitude where you could tell she knew she was a bad motherfucker in the best way possible. She went on to win National Player of the Year again as a freshman that season. But her injury troubles after that year seem to have robbed her of that swagger. That's not to say that she still hasn't been incredible, even after switching positions to power forward because everybody was going down with injuries for the Huskies last season. She was still spectacular, putting up 22, 5, and 4 to go along with 2 steals plus a block and a half per game on insane 53, 42, 83 shooting splits. However, too often she seemed unwilling to assert her dominance and take games over. Gino's talked about it at length. There should not be stretches of any game where we don't feel her presence on the court. She should not have games where there's any doubt who the best player on the floor was that day. She is too good for that. Now, I imagine learning to trust her body again has something to do with that. But she did play 39 games last year and didn't get hurt. That should be hopefully a confidence boost. And now here we are entering the final season of her UConn career. As great as she's been, she won't be talked about with the Birds, the Tarasis, the Stewies, the Moores if she does not win a national championship. Fair or not, her legacy comes down to this season. I don't think anybody was beating South Carolina last year, but without all kinds of players like Azzi and Caroline Ducharme, she brought them within a whistle of getting a chance to see. Those players are back along with the freshmen and transfer reinforcements. It sounds nuts because they've been to 3 Final Fours, including 1 title game with Paige, but this is her best shot by far at winning a national championship. And if they're going to do it, she's got to lead the way. UConn is where the Big East Final Four hopes begin and end, but there will be plenty of fun hoops to check out. Creighton nearly upset UCLA in the second round last year. They're ranked 21st to start the season. Lauren Jensen and Morgan Molly will lead that squad. And Providence should be on the come up behind Olivia Olson, Bryn Farrell, and Grace Afosa, who all averaged double figures last season. So a lot to look forward to, but UConn, as usual, is the cream of the crop, and these other teams will have to show me something before I put them in that tier. All right, that will do it for the ACC and Big East Final Four contender preview. Be sure to check out the rest of my women's hoops previews because I'm doing them just like this for all the conferences in the preseason top 25. Make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out. As always, appreciate you watching, listening, rating, subscribing, reviewing, and sharing. And I will catch you later.